What's going on, Orlando Magic fans? You guys are back with the Six Man Show. It is May, M-A-Y. It is not March. It is May 11th, 2020. Once again, you guys are back with the Six Man Show. This is Jonathan. Luke, what's going on, brother?
Man, I'm just staying safe.
Staying safe. You got the mask on.
I got the mask on right now. And this plan is almost backfiring, Jonathan, because I'm fogging up my glasses every time I breathe.
Oh, that's the worst, bro.
So it's either my glasses, my vision goes, or my safety. So I don't know which one to choose. But we'll make it happen.
Well, actually, you know what? Now that you're wearing that, I'm not properly dressed. Give me just 1 second. I need to do something here.
Okay. Thank you. I really hope you're putting on a mask. It's a jersey.
The electric blue throwback jersey. And why is that, Luke?
If those aren't beautiful.
Why did I have to bust this baby out?
We got to see a glimpse of those bad boys
tonight
in the Last Dance doc tonight.
They did,
in 1995, 96.
94, 95.
Right.
They're trying to paint Jordan in this wonderful light, you know what I mean? But, he comes back in 95 from baseball, the baseball strikes going on and everything like that. Drops the double nickel in Madison Square Garden, and it's MJ's back.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Lose to the Magic in 6 games. Magic clinched the series wearing these electric blue throwbacks, right? But now in the documentary, even Horace Grant, who we talked a little bit about Horace Grant earlier this week, with a revelation that a lot of us learned about something Shaq related with Horace Grant. But now tonight on this doc, which we'll talk more about in a moment, he's given the whole excuse. Oh, MJ wasn't himself in that series. Miss me with that.
Mm-hmm. He wasn't himself. That's all it was, Jonathan. The Magic, we didn't deserve the win. Jordan was gassed. He was in baseball shape. But, it's fine. He had played, 17 games prior to that series?
Right.
And his fourth one, or however what it was, dropped to 55 in Madison Square Garden.
Not the same guy.
Right.
Not the same guy.
45 ain't 23, Jonathan. That's the thing.
You know what? The Magic, we were probably trash. That's probably what it was.
That's it.
We weren't any good. Michael Jordan, he wasn't the same guy. So even when we look back, when the Magic were actually good, we don't get respect. It's always some kind of discount.
MJ in his 17 games was dropping a cool 27 a game.
Not back.
But not back. 27, 7, and 5. And wasn't back.
Yeah.
But you can see, I will say this. Though I will say it was a little ridiculous tonight hearing them talk about how, they just essentially discounted the Magic's win and what that meant, and beating Jordan and, being the only reason that he didn't win that many in a row. He didn't win the 7, essentially. But he did shoot 41%, which was down from the 49 the year before when he was playing, and then the next year he shot 49%. So he was down about 8 points in his percentage, but nevertheless still averaged the 27 a game and was definitely still himself.
I would agree with that. I would completely agree with that. But let's not get too much into that. I had to make the wardrobe change here. It's not a Horace Grant jersey. It's Markelle Fultz, but it'll do for now. For the occasion. So we do have a couple of things that we want to go over this week. A few things that were in the news. I think let's start with Horace Grant, because that was a little bit earlier in the week. So if you didn't get a chance to hear that, some of the guys over at Barstool, the Part of My Take podcast, they had Horace Grant on, a week or so ago, talking about the Last Dance documentary. And Big Cat on that wanted to ask Horace, some questions about the Orlando Magic and, not winning a championship there and kind of everything that happened that, led to Shaq's departure from Orlando. And it turns out that while Shaq was going through that whole process, he calls Horace up one day, like 3 times, I think is what Horace said. Horace didn't pick up the phone, didn't return his calls, nothing like that. And then the next thing that he hears is that Shaq signed with the Lakers. And he said, you know what? If I would have picked up the phone and he told me he was thinking of doing that, I would have begged him. He said, I would have got on my knees and begged him to stay.
Did he say why he didn't answer or return them? Did he get into that? I didn't listen to the whole interview.
No. Okay. So I just a little bit of tidbit here. Now, I have nothing to back this up. This is complete speculation and hearsay. So take this with a grain of salt. Okay?
You getting a little conspirious?
A little conspiracy theory here. I don't want to see – look, I don't want this to be our debut on Bleacher Report or anything like that, okay? I want it to be for a good reason. I don't need Horace Grant hitting us up, talking about my mom and stuff like that, all right?
Right.
So I posted that little that snippet from that interview on the Orlando Magic Reddit page. And there's a guy who claimed that he knows someone that lived in the same neighborhood as Horace Grant at the time, and claimed that he always had very attractive women at his house. So he alluded to the fact that maybe Horace was a little preoccupied, possibly.
Wow.
So, yeah, I have nothing to back that up. I'm sure it's complete BS, but
it's fun to think about the fact that actually it hurts.
It's
to
sad.
Think about, but that's real life. Your friend calls you, Jonathan. I'm sorry, but if I'm with my wife, and you call me, and I might not answer. That's all I'm saying.
I understand. I would, in certain circumstances, I would prefer that you didn't answer. So,
yeah, I wouldn't answer.
But
and,
I was trying to take a little snooze today. You called me. I was like, man, this might be an emergency. Luke is 3,000 miles away in Omaha, but maybe he's somewhere without gas, and I'm his only line of contact. I got to pick up the phone. That's what a bro does.
You did answer the call. I also called you yesterday or the day before, and you were sleeping, so I woke you up. I mean, so you're answering all kinds of calls for me.
I was out here trying to get paper, doing a little Uber Eats on the side. I was out late, and you called me, woke me up out of bed. I could count on one hand the other voices I'd rather wake up to. So
right, that's it.
Yeah, just
it's
bros
me.
Being dudes.
It's me.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. But that Horace stuff is, I mean, it hurts.
It
hurts
hurts
a lot. The other stuff that hurts to hear a lot is, Michael Jordan withholding food from Horace. But other than that,
oh man, let's not talk about that. No, the best
all,
thing.
All I know is Michael Jordan was not withholding food from Scottie Pippen. I know that. It didn't matter what kind of game Scottie had. MJ was not trying to do that with Scottie.
No.
But Horace, for whatever reason, Horace seemed to take it. But, I mean, Shannon Sharp went on.
I was just about to say that's the best thing I seen all week.
Just saying that he would have just whooped MJ if he tried that on him, which we know. Shannon being a football player, he's huge. I don't even think MJ would try to attest to that, he would stand a chance. But all I'm saying is it's pretty crazy. I mean, this is the times where I wish social media existed back then, just because that's nobody does that now.
No.
Nobody does that type of stuff. And I was talking to somebody the other day, and I said, what happens if social media is around back then? What happens to the legacy of MJ, the legacy of a lot of these guys,
right,
for what they did? Punching Steve Kerr in the face, which they talked about tonight, things like that. And he said it wouldn't. That stuff wouldn't happen.
Right.
Because everybody's scared to death about social media and what it kind of just airs out everything. So I do wonder, back in the 90s, how different it would have been in the sports world with MJ and stuff if social media was around to hold people accountable, withholding teammates with food. You know how short amount of time that would take to get out on Twitter?
Oh, yeah.
It wouldn't take long at all. So it's all, I mean, the MJ doc and has brought that, Horace kind of talked about it, and whether that was public knowledge or not, it is now. And so, yeah, man, you look at all that stuff, and it's insane kind of what people used to do back then and what they got away with. But all that to say, what did you think of the doc tonight?
I mean, I enjoyed it. Like, obviously, we all knew that the baseball stuff that, MJ left and went and played, for the Chicago White Sox minor league team and everything like that. But obviously, like, I was super, super young at that time. Like, when MJ retired, like, in 93, I don't even think I was born yet. I think it happened, like, a few days before I was born. So being able to just go through it and learn some more information about that. And then really the whole reason of watching tonight, and you and I doing this podcast, we were really just anticipating getting to the Orlando Magic. Like, we had seen, a couple of, snippets of them throughout this documentary and everything like that, like going back to, what was it, the 98 All-Star game where, they were talking about Kobe and you saw Penny Hardaway in that locker room and everything like that. That was pretty cool. You saw some shots. It looked like Shaq was at the quote-unquote Jordan Dome when they were filming Space Jam. In the summer of 95 or 96 after they lost to the Magic. So that was pretty cool. But I mean, obviously the whole point of the documentary is to try to paint Jordan in a positive light, which honestly isn't a very hard thing to do. He's arguably the greatest basketball player of all time. But I do wish they would have spent a little bit more time on the Orlando Magic. But of course, that's my opinion from a Magic fan. Most people probably don't care all that much about the fact that the Bulls, lost that series. Whether Jordan was at 100% or not, they kind of brush over it. They make excuses for it, like we saw in the documentary tonight. And that's kind of the thing that I was most surprised at. I touched on it earlier, was Horace Grant kind of making that omission that, MJ wasn't, 100%. Because if I beat you, I don't care what excuse you have, I'm still going to hold that over you that I beat you, that I won.
Mm-hmm.
So to hear him kind of omit that, and then to admit that in 96 in the Eastern Conference Finals when they were, I don't want to say the S word,
don't say it,
but that they didn't have a chance, that was kind of hurtful as well. Because I mean, Horace, played really, really well in that series against the Bulls in 95, but 96, apart from Shaq and Penny, really didn't get too much offensive production from really anybody else, which led to the sweep of the Magic there. But I said the S word. I didn't want to say it, but I said it.
You said it.
But yeah, I mean, in 96, we're talking about arguably the greatest basketball team in the history of the world. Now, that is up for debate when you start talking about like the 2017, 2018 Golden State Warriors. Sure, that's not the team that holds the regular season win record, but when you throw Kevin Durant into that mix with the team with the best regular season record of all time, then it's just, it depends, what happens. If you just throw them on a court today without allowing the Bulls to get acclimated to the three-point line and everything like that, it's not even close. It's just, it'd be silly to make that argument. But what about you? What did you take from tonight?
Well, to be honest with you, I was nervous. I was texting you, and I was like, man, what happens if they don't even touch on the Magic? And I believe you tweeted something from the 6-man account saying, I really hope they don't brush over the fact that this happened in the playoffs, that the Magic beat the Bulls. So yeah, man, I think that I think it was. I mean, it's all interesting. It's all stuff that you may or may not have heard before, but it's cool. I think the one thing that obviously the ESPN's done a lot right with this documentary, but the one thing that I believe they got 100% right is MJ in his interviews and kind of driving the whole thing.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how many days they were filming and how many hours they filmed at a time, but you got to imagine it was a lot of time, a lot of footage they probably didn't even use from the interviews, but MJ really carries the whole documentary. So I do think that is the cool aspect, is that you get that live reaction from MJ throughout the whole doc. Obviously that carried into tonight. That's kind of been the theme throughout the whole, all 8 parts so far. So yeah, man, I think it's really well done. I do think that there are some times where I'm like, okay, can we fast forward? Can we get through this? I know what happens here. I get it. I think most basketball fans watching this know what happens here. But I do believe that the element of MJ kind of adding to it and doing his own commentary really keeps the doc going. I think it keeps it interesting.
I like the point that you just made. All this footage that they have, and I don't know how long they were filming. Some of that, which is obviously more recent footage of MJ. Kind of talking about these moments in his career, but it seems to be done. Over like a serious length of time, because there are certain points where it looks like he's maybe 10 or 15 pounds heavier. Maybe that's the camera angle that they're shooting at, but there are some. It seems like they're kind of filming from the right of the room, towards the right, where you kind of see like his left side, and then when they film the other side from his right, he looks a little bit heavier. So, I obviously they worked on this a long time. We have footage from 22 years ago and beyond that.
And interviews that involve guys like David Stern, who are obviously not with us anymore. So
yeah, Jerry Krause. Did you know that Jerry Krause was like the most evil person that ever lived? I had no idea of that until I watched this documentary.
Like little things about Jerry Krause, but not to this extent. I mean, he seemed pretty harsh.
I'm being totally facetious, by the way. Like, this documentary is literally making him look like the worst person alive.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like they've done all this stuff where it's like he looks terrible, and then you had some other people that kind of stood up for him during the doc at the beginning, the first two parts, saying, Jerry is one of the nicest guys ever. And this just kind of, some things put him in a bad light. Obviously, when you're getting pitted against Michael Jordan, the most beloved basketball player of all time, it's really hard to seem like you're the good guy when MJ is proposing, what he thinks and what he thought should have been done, and Jerry Krause kind of just absolutely looking like a villain the entire time. So yeah, it's a little weird how they portray him, but I mean, I imagine just like in any business, there's guys that look like bad guys, and there's guys that look like good guys, and Jerry Krause, unfortunately, is kind of in the line of fire here and is painted as the bad guy in this doc.
Yeah, and it kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth, just because, like, obviously he's not around to defend himself, and like you mentioned, throughout maybe the first episode or the first two episodes, there was a little bit of kind of sticking up for Jerry Krause, but it's like every episode they just got to make sure that you don't forget that Jerry Krause was a evil piece of crap. You know what I mean? So I also just kind of find it weird. Obviously we didn't live through that whole thing, so you can watch all the documentaries and everything like that, but unless you were experiencing some of this news unfold and break in real time and following the day-to-day of the 98 Bulls and everything like that, the fact that Michael Jordan just felt like he had no other choice, that he couldn't play basketball if it wasn't for the Bulls and if it wasn't for Phil Jackson, that's just kind of perplexing to me. But like I said, we didn't live through all of that. I'm sure there are nuances that aren't included in the documentary, but that's just kind of strange to me.
Yeah, I mean, like with every doc, there's an angle. There's things that get touched on. There's things that don't. I'm sure that you could tell a whole other story with Jerry Krause of good, fun stories of, how about the fact that he let MJ bully him essentially all the time.
There's some pretty good roasts in there, I can't lie.
There are, but he took it. I mean, it seems like he took it like a champ for the most part. And so, I mean, you can make anything seem however you want it. And especially when you got as much footage as they've got, you got plenty of angles to get. So, yeah, man, it's really, I mean, it's crazy. The whole doc is crazy. I'm, all the unprecedented footage that's going to come out and all that stuff. So it's pretty nuts.
The other really big takeaway from me tonight that I missed on a moment ago was game, what, I forget which game it was. We just watched this documentary, but the year that Jordan sat out the whole year, the Bulls and the Knicks series, where in that game in the closing moments, Phil Jackson decides to run the play for Tony Kukoc, and Scottie Pippen just sits out. Now, I've heard that story before, but I couldn't help think, like, if Kukoc misses that shot and the series is over there, and
Pippen gets crucified.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, not even if that happened today. If that happens back in 94, he gets killed. I can't even imagine what would happen to him today with social media and everything like that.
Yeah, and it's funny you bring that up. Pippen talks about they cut back to him to the present day, and he says, "I'd go back and do the same thing."
I was like, "What is that about? What do you mean?"
And it's very easy to say that when Kukoc made the shot.
Right.
But like you said, if he misses it, this is totally different.
Yeah.
It is totally different, and I promise that if that happens, they fast forward to current day today, and Pippen says, "I would redo it if I could."
No way. Yeah. Yeah.
it-
I just couldn't believe that he still said that. Like, oh, I would still do it. What do you mean you would still do it?
Yeah, I didn't quite understand why he was taking like the mean guy, like, no, I did what I did and I wouldn't change a thing about it. Like that was crazy. I also can't imagine if something like that happened today. We've had some weird things happen in the NBA, obviously, such as D Rose just like completely missing a game and not showing up. We've had
Right.
some odd things like that happen, but I can't imagine just like final play. It's Klay Thompson, the Warriors, essentially is what I would liken it to. Like final moments of the game, the Warriors have a chance to win the game. They draw the play up for Steph, and Klay gets mad and says, "No, I'm sitting out.
Right.
I'm
It
sitting
would
out.
never
I'm
happen.
not going in." And then he gets roasted by the media the whole next day.
Yeah, probably for the rest of his career. And I mean, obviously, that is a blemish on Scottie Pippen's resume, like they touched on in the documentary. But I don't think it gets brought up, nearly as much as maybe you would expect it to, or like you said, if it happened today, it would just be a completely different story.
Yeah, very much so. It's a completely different thing, and yeah, man, it's just I don't know. That was pretty nuts to me. You've heard that story, but to hear him talk about it, like I said, it's kind of the whole thing that makes this whole documentary is the commentary, and just had the bounce back and forth between interviews and seeing who they're going to interview next and all that kind of stuff. So it's super interesting stuff, man, and I'm interested. I think it's going to get better in the next two parts. I think the finale, it's set up for a pretty good finale.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to see the way that it maps out. But I just feel like anytime, we start watching highlights and, whether it's just, watching highlights of Shaq and Penny, on YouTube, or if it's the 30-30 for documentary, this magic moment and stuff like that. Anytime we look back, even when this is a Markelle Fultz jersey, but just what this like colorway signifies, like the blue with the white pinstripes and the black and white trim and everything like that, you just can't like help but look at that and just think like, what if, like, why could that not have happened? Like, I was not old enough in that moment to really, I would never be able to appreciate that championship in the same way as you would if you lived through that. But just the fact, if I could just look back and say, yeah, you know what, at least the Magic have one championship. I wasn't there to witness it, but just give us that little yellow tag on the back of the collar. That would just mean so much. Like, that team would just be viewed so much differently, like, historically.
And, you got to think, if the Magic win one that year, they win a few more.
The confidence even if they, and Horace Grant talked
players
about
stick
this.
around.
Yep.
Players stick around, and we win championships. And who knows?
Rings.
You might win rings to the point where you could then say, I remember us winning that ring. I don't remember the first one, but I remember the next ones.
I remember the eighth one. You know what I mean?
Right.
Maybe not
not
the eighth,
5,
but yeah.
not 6. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that that would obviously completely rewrite history if we were able to win that year. Guys stick around, we win more rings, we remember those rings, and it's a whole different franchise. But all that to say, you're wearing that guy Markelle Fultz jersey. I love some Markelle Fultz, so I'm glad that I would like to have won a championship, but I'm glad that we got guys like Markelle and Jonathan Isaac and guys like that are hopefully going to get us there one day. I don't know, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think me personally, I'm about like 80% of where I would like the team to be, at least from like a roster standpoint, leaving plenty of room for development. We definitely need like a go-to scorer. Like, that's just 100%. Yeah. We think it could be Markelle. We think, Chuma is going to be a big help next year when he's able to come back. But whenever I see that stuff and I look back, I just can't think like what if? Like, it would just... Like you said, it would change so many things. Like Horace said in that interview, if Nick Anderson makes one free throw in Game 1 against the Rockets, the Magic win, their confidence skyrockets, and then, like you alluded to, like the history books of the NBA and the Orlando Magic as a franchise would be completely different. So,
Yep. Hurts to think about, Jonathan. It really does.
yeah, you don't really seem to love talking about it. I can't say that I blame you. But so let's take this as an opportunity. You mentioned Markelle Fultz, Jonathan Isaac, kind of the present state of the Magic and what the future might hold. So we got a little bit of Orlando Magic news this week, like a little glimmer of hope. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So we've had, a lot of things going on. And, the NBA is kind of picking up speed a little bit, and I think it'll just continue to do that, especially as we get into this coming week. Hopefully our next podcast is even more exciting in terms of on the news front with the NBA and optimism. But Mark Stein did tweet out this week that Orlando is targeting Tuesday for opening its doors after they received authorization from Orange County Department of Health to test players, and it's going to allow them to test everybody in the facility essentially starting this week. And Tuesday, players will be back. We got to see Evan Fournier posted that he was in the facility this past week. Obviously, they've got very tight guidelines right now that they're having to adhere to. But all that to say, man, I think we're getting there. But I don't know. Obviously, this kind of all hinges on COVID and what it wants to do. Right. We're all kind of at the mercy of this, as we've come to find out. And, nothing's guaranteed. But I do think that, states are slowly reopening. Restaurants are at 25 to 50% capacity now. And some restaurants choosing not to do that. But you got to think that we're somewhere close. And I think that we might be.
Yeah, it definitely seems like we're taking, the steps in the right direction. Like you said, they've been given the go ahead to test players that are asymptomatic, which in my opinion is huge and really what a lot of this is going to hinge on. Adam Silver was also on a conference call with, the entire Players Association this past week, where they kind of laid out what they're looking to do and some of the options that they're looking at as far as bringing the league back in a bubble and what capacity and what that's going to look like. And then there's reports coming out that players aren't a huge fan of playing like in a bubble, and having to basically live in that bubble to finish out the rest of the season. And my whole thing is like, if you've been paying, even the slightest bit attention, to this whole scenario unfolding over the past 2+ months, like what other options do you have? I understand the fragility of the situation. I understand their concerns, but without games, without a product, you have no way to generate revenue and generate income for the league, and in turn, the players probably are not going to get paid. So if you want to get paid, and a lot of these guys, it's not everybody's LeBron James or Chris Paul, these guys making tens of $millions a year. There's a lot of, end of the bench guys. We're talking about guys like, Melvin Frazier Jr. or like a Wes Iwundu, guys like that aren't making tens of $millions a year. Now, yes, they're living very comfortably and doing very well for themselves, but a lot of these guys still depend on that paycheck to take care of their family and their well-being and everything like that. So I don't know about you, but I was a little bit surprised to hear that like, apparently there were a number of players that were like not crazy about that idea. Like, in my opinion, like I'll do anything to get basketball back right now.
Yeah, and I know that they're going to have those big name guys like Steph and LeBron. I know Steph jokingly commented on a post that mentioned Disney World being the place that they go for the rest of the season, saying things like, does this mean we get free passes to the park? Which obviously not going to happen, but that shows that he at least is thinking optimistically about it,
right?
And is in favor of, at least that's how I took it, that he's in favor of returning. LeBron obviously came out and spoke kind of on the behalf of a lot of guys, saying we don't care what we have to do, we want to get this done. So as long as you got guys like that who are kind of the faces of the NBA leading the charge there, I think that if it's available, if COVID and the CDC allows it, I think we see the NBA at Disney. So I hope that's the case, man. But it does feel too good to be true. at this point. Obviously, worst case is the season gets canceled, but I don't know about you, but I would like to see a little bit of basketball here in the next couple months, and I hope we get that.
I definitely think it's fair to say that I would agree with you in that scenario. I definitely would like to see some basketball, more than a little bit. I would like to see a lot of bit of basketball. That would be my preference.
And when we had Keith Smith on the podcast, and you guys can go check that out if you haven't heard it, but Keith talked about that there's certain things like the NBA tries to meet a benchmark of I believe, what did he say, 60 or 70 games. The league wants to reach that amount of games in order to appease local, to
fulfill
TV
those
deals.
Contracts.
Yeah. So there are a lot of logistics that you and I don't get or know everything about.
Probably most of them, actually. We have no idea what we're talking about.
Oh, yeah, of course. But we're currently, I think they're sitting at like 64, 65 games right now that have been played. So if they can get, did you say 60 or 70 games?
I think it was 70. I believe he said 70.
So if we can get 4 or 5 games, essentially to complete a regular season, I'm assuming that's how that works. You complete the regular season, quote unquote, as to appease those deals, and then we can maybe go into a playoff. So maybe they say, okay, end of the regular season here, we'll do 5 games, 6 games, 7 games, something, just to get to that number and hit that number, and then we will jump into playoffs. I don't know what it's going to look like, Jonathan. I'm not going to act like I know.
Right.
But I do think that there are good signs, as we've mentioned, that we could be playing basketball here in the next couple months.
The thing that Keith also mentioned that was part of the reason I was a little bit surprised to hear, and the players probably aren't privy to this information, but he did mention that if you're at one of these resorts or at one of the parks, and a hurricane or a tropical storm comes through and you get this kind of shelter-in-place order, that Disney does a really good job. Obviously, you can't access the parks at that time, but Disney does a really good job of bringing entertainment to those resorts to try to keep those families entertained and everything like that. So
yeah,
obviously it's not ideal, but it's better than nothing.
You got to imagine that if they bring these families in, which apparently is the case, that they want to bring family in to these resorts, if they do that at Disney or whatever it might be, you got to think they're going to be putting some pretty nice resorts. And I don't know if you've stayed in any of those resorts, Jonathan, but these resorts are not too bad.
No,
I don't think.
Yeah,
I don't think that the 5 and 6 year old kids are going to have too much of an issue being locked in the resort all day. They got a lot of cool stuff to do. They have, like you said, Keith touched on, people coming in to kind of entertain them. Their restaurants are very entertaining as well. They've got some really cool ones in certain resorts where they interact with you at a higher level than you would at your local Carrabba's or Outback. So they've got a lot of cool stuff to offer. So I do think that that Disney would be a really cool solution, as we've talked about many times. But I think that we're hopefully to that point soon.
Yeah, the last thing I kind of want to touch on that was really a bummer. I'm in my car driving the other night, and I started to get some of these notifications from Woj to my phone talking about that meeting that Adam Silver had with the Players Association. And, he brought up the fact that we probably won't see fans in arenas until there's a vaccine for COVID-19. And that was just the ultimate bummer, the ultimate gut punch. It makes sense. That idea has been batting around, but to hear Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, say that, means that the league and the owners around the league are strongly considering that. And in my opinion, that seems like the most likely scenario at this point.
Yeah, and they pioneer the way probably for a lot of other things. They're the first sport to really shut it down immediately. And you got to think that colleges will have to follow suit, because who knows, maybe that idea and everything gets endorsed by the CDC. Obviously, a lot of this is going to be driven by the CDC, telling them what's safe and what's not. And here I think you could see a little bit of, Adam Silver saying this, we might not have fans for this long. And but I think you could see them kind of double back if the CDC comes out and says, I think you guys can do this. I think you can afford to have fans, whether that's at half capacity, quarter capacity, some type of capacity. There's got to be some number that the CDC would be like, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. So who knows? Maybe we look at half half full stadiums and arenas in the next year and a half, 2 years. But yeah, with that all being said, I don't doubt that Adam Silver is ready to not allow fans in arenas for that long, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he circles back around and says, okay, never mind, the CDC is saying we can do this or we can't do this, and this is what we're going to do moving forward.
My question about that would be, like, at some point, someone is going to have to hold some kind of liability. So if the CDC says, okay, you can have, 16,000, fans, in an arena, or, NBA arena, the capacity is much smaller than football stadium. So let's say
about 20.
Yeah, let's say, the capacity would be something like 4,000 fans or 8,000 fans or something like that. And then you go to a game and they can and you contract coronavirus and you die, and they can kind of link that back to you contracting it at an NBA game. Are you then having to sign some kind of waiver before you go in and play this game? Are they going to put the players or the arena workers at risk to be, exposed to coronavirus? Like, as soon as Rudy Gobert got it, the league was over.
Yep.
So who's to say that doesn't happen again? So that, in my opinion, that's why I think it's the most likely scenario going forward, at least for the NBA, right? Because it is, you are so close. You're closer to the action than in any other sport. It is completely indoors, right? There's no breeze. There's no open air. There's nothing, right? So you cough, that's just moving about, right?
Yeah, and you say that about the NBA stadiums and stuff, but and you look at college football stadiums, and they got 90,000 to 100,000, 110,000 people packed in a stadium like sardines, and sweating all over each other, and like you said, coughing all over. It's just it doesn't look good for fans of college football, definitely.
Right.
They definitely aren't going to get a pass here. They're the furthest thing. They're the ones that CDC is probably most concerned about. But yeah, I don't know if you got a chance to watch it. You and I are kind of talking about it, but the UFC fights last night, they played, or they competed. They were kind of the first sport besides maybe WWE which is why I say sport. But they're the first sport to compete somewhere that didn't have fans. Right. And man, it was such a weird atmosphere. I don't know much about fighting. I'm not going to act like I do, but I do know that when a fighter lands a punch, the arena and the arena goes crazy. But last night it was weird. It was like they'd make a great connection with a right hook, and all you heard was the opposing fighter's coach talking to him.
Right. It's like watching a sparring match almost.
Right. And then they go and you can hear everything perfectly. So it did make for a really entertaining thing, and maybe the NBA can lean into that. Maybe you mic up more players or whatever, and kind of just tell the players, hey, let's not go too crazy here. We're going to be airing like a lot of what you say a lot. Obviously, TNT does the wired, ESPN does the wired stuff and things like that. So I think that we're looking at some pretty cool stuff that that arenas can do and production crews can do. So from a production standpoint, which is my background, I'm very kind of intrigued to see what can happen with an empty stadium. Because it is very eerie, and it's just very weird, man. But it is cool to kind of get to hear the details of everybody talking.
Well, you just brought up something pretty something cool, and it kind of struck an idea in my head. So, we've been talking about, like, if there's not going to be fans, like, we need to hear the players talking trash, right? Mm-hmm. And it has to be uncensored. Like, I would pay extra a month on my cable to get that uncensored. Now, before the Last Dance documentary, I had never heard an MFer on live television. Have you?
No.
Maybe ESPN is testing the waters. See how this is received, so that when they get back to playing, if Pat Bev is all over LeBron and drops an MF, we were like, we've heard this before. No big deal.
This ain't our first rodeo.
This ain't our first rodeo, so I don't know. But I do think if you're going to do that, that would just bring, like, the fan atmosphere and the fan reaction brings so much to, like, a production and a broadcast of an NBA game that you have to have something to kind of replace that. Maybe they pump in arena noise or something like that, but, like, we've got to hear the players talk trash. We've never really been able to get that, and that would just be amazing.
Yeah, aside from kind of a random mic that'll pick it up from like the rim and things like that from around the hoop. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of things that they can do. I don't know if we get unfiltered things, unfortunately, just because there are children who love sports, and I think
True.
I think ESPN's getting away with the whole uncensored thing with the
MJ.
MJ doc. It's MJ doc, and they probably looked back at how many times he cursed, and they were like, well, we're just gonna do this.
We don't want this entire thing to be bleeped out.
So they just put a warning at the beginning. But I just can't see a world where there's that viewer discretion advised essentially at the beginning of NBA basketball games or college football or
Right.
NFL football games. But all that to say, yeah, I think that we're in unprecedented times, and I'm sick of hearing that phrase, but it's what we're in.
It's every single day.
And every single day. And but yeah, man, I think that there's a lot of cool things they're going to be able to do. I think it's going to be very weird because watching UFC, and that's a sport I'm not even really familiar with, but I could tell that it was just very odd. But it was nice last night to have live sports. That was pretty refreshing.
That's awesome. Well, time is going to tell. We don't know how much longer this whole thing is going to get dragged out, but it at least seems like, the NBA and, specifically the Magic, they're starting to take some steps towards getting back to basketball. So any Magic players, if you're out there, if you're going to be back at the Amway this week, live stream it. We're dying for anything. Put it on Instagram. Take some videos. We know that you guys love filming your workouts and putting it on Instagram, so this is the time to do that.
By the way, this is the only time I'm going to watch your workout videos. So post them if you'd like. I'll watch them. This is the only time.
I don't know, man. Markelle Fultz workout videos last year got leaked, and Twitter went insane.
That's an exception, all right? That is quite the exception. I will say I watched all of Markelle Fultz,
and you freaked out
in the gym, and I freaked out. Any rotation in the shoulder, I was checking his shoulder, zooming in on the video, making sure that his shoulder's all right. But other than that, man, I'm not watching your workout videos. But right now,
some Chuma Okeke maybe, would that interest you?
That you maybe.
Yeah, I could get you
there
with some Chuma. I got you.
You'd get me there.
Oh boy.
Anywhere else,
anyways,
I don't care.
All right, buddy. You got anything else?
No, I'm good.
Awesome. All right, well, guys, we talked The Last Dance. We talked some NBA quarantine like we've been doing for the last 8 weeks. Eventually, you guys are actually going to be able to hear Luke with some basketball takes. Believe that or not.
It's coming. They're going to come in. They're going to come in hot.
Very hot. Very
hot.
Like Taco Bell out the back end.
Whoa! Wow.
That hot.
Yes,
sir.
That's pretty hot, but yeah, probably.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for listening to the Six Man Show. You can catch us each Monday. We'll be bringing the fire like Taco Bell, guys. So thanks for listening to the Six Man Show. For Luke, this is Jonathan. We will catch you guys next time. See ya.